Hello and welcome back to Hold On I'm Talking Brother. My name is Joe Greenwood and you are listening to our preview of UFC 304, which is headlined by Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad 2 for the welterweight title, with a co-main event of Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades for the heavyweight title, live from Manchester, England at 3 o'clock in the morning UK time, to allow for the US audience, because everyone in the US is hyped up to see Christopher Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodriguez, obviously. As per usual, I'm joined by my regular co-host, Tom Ballon. Tom, I'm actually going to start with that, my first question. How badly do you think that start time is going to affect the fighters on this card?
It's certainly an adjustment they'll have to make, Joe. Very strange, because, of course, most of them are UK-based. They're not just UK champs, but UK-based. We love that. Aspinall, just 20 minutes away from the stadium. Everything should be fine, but he's got to adjust his clock to this peculiar time, 3 in the morning. By the time they come out, we're looking at, 5, 6 in the morning?
5 in the morning for Leon, I think. That's what they're predicting.
Yeah, it's not on, Joe. It's not on. But I think a fight of this magnitude, a rematch, a title fight, a chance to put on the show on a pay-per-view in front of a home crowd, the English boys will all be popping.
Yes.
And I don't think it'll be a factor. I think adrenaline will be just through the roof anyway, and the crowd will be right behind them.
Excellent show. Yeah, I agree. To be honest, I do agree. I think these are, despite the sport and despite many issues within the sport, these are professional athletes. They are going to prepare for this. Tom Aspinall's been dunking his hands in petrol to show how serious he is about this fight. But yeah, I agree. I think they'll be all relatively prepared. And to be honest, when you think about it, the ones that really have it bad are Aspinall and Edwards and Blades and Muhammad. Like, those are the 4 guys that are really going to struggle, I think. The rest is all kind of like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I feel like it's probably not that bad compared to those 2. Well, those 4 men, I should say. Anyway, listeners, let's get straight into it. We're going to preview the main card of UFC 304. We're going to make picks for each fight. If we get the fighter that wins correct, we get 1 point, and if we get the method correct as well, that's 10 points on offer. I, Joe Greenwood, your current defending champion. Tom's smirking already, because he has said to me already that he's wiling out with his picks. So he's going renegade mode. And that means I've read him perfectly, listeners, because I knew he would do this. I knew his biases going into this. And speaking of biases, let's start with the main event. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. We're going to get it straight out of the way. Me and Tom are massively biased in this fight of who we want to win. But Tom is biased even more because he strongly dislikes Belal Muhammad, whereas I quite like him. Tom, can you look past your hate here and give a fair assessment of Belal Muhammad?
I will put my biases to one side. I mean, Joe, I will already concede right off the bat that they aren't necessarily justified. It's not a comment on the man himself necessarily. It's more, when you've got Shavkat in the division, you've got Jeff Neal, you've got Leon,
Jack Della.
Yeah,
that's
what I'm saying.
Those are the exciting ones.
And then Belal Muhammad.
Yeah, Ian Gary. It's all kind of on the same sort of page, isn't it, those two? Like, yeah, certain names really pop off for you. I mean, even Gilbert Burns, I'd be like, yeah, Edwards Burns? Yeah, fuck you, I'd be well up for that.
I've had to give it up, Joe. He's over the hill.
Yeah, of course, but
the curtains are almost closed there. I'm sorry to say,
but he would put up an exciting effort, I think, but in a clear losing one to Leon. I think with Belal. Anyway, listeners, main event: Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad, welterweight title on the line, rematch from a fight that happened in 2021, I believe, that ended in the second round due to an eye poke from Leon Edwards on Belal Muhammad. Have you rewatched that fight in the build-up to this one?
Yeah, I have.
Can we acknowledge that Belal was as bad as Leon when it came to the eye pokes in that fight? Like, that was, they were both at it, and Leon, as we know, is bad for being at it. He likes to get his dirty little moves in. As we said in the Usman trilogy fight, he the bingo card of cheating. The low blow, the eye poke, the fence grab. He's like, I'll have one of them.
Joe, you want to be a champ in 2024. These are the margins, all right?
I agree.
Are you ready to jab that eye? Are you ready to grab that cage?
Yep.
I mean, look, the referee has to manage it. In that fight, he did. Little note on it, Joe, about the result there. Of course, it was called a no contest, and neither fighter took home a win. Was that the right call?
What, in that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Why? Because, I mean,
some could be like perhaps Leon, he had been warned. Some people might argue he could have been disqualified from the fight.
Right. No. I think that would have been a bit harsh. DQ for me. It's not like, I don't know, it's not like a repeated low blow or like, the need to kneeing a downed opponent in the head sort of rule break. It's kind of like, it's almost like a weird natural thing with what happens with MMA is the eye poke. It's kind of like a thing we just have to accept.
Yeah, especially if the person doing the poking is English.
Yeah, exactly. But,
that's what I'm hearing from you.
Right.
What I'm hearing from you.
But what were your main takeaways from watching that first one again in the build-up to this? And is there something... Because there's a couple of things to me that really stand out that are probably going to be a factor and not a factor at the same time.
Well, I guess before we look at the strengths and weaknesses of either fighter and how they might approach this matchup, let's kind of, as we usually do, think a little bit about the narrative and where these guys are at in their career. Now, Bilal, for me, he finds himself right now in a very similar place to where Leon was going into their first fight. Yeah, Joe, I can see you're on board with that. You want me to continue, and I will. All right? I say it because Bilal is on this huge streak, not really caught many big headlines. His best win is probably over a one-armed Gilbert Burns in a fight he couldn't win with 20 minutes with Gilbert on one arm. Now, Leon didn't have performances like that, but he had fairly middling decision performances and wasn't someone that people wanted to get behind. And Bilal is the same. He's not a brand that anybody wants to really buy into. Leon obviously overcame that rough period, and where he finds himself going into this fight is the effectively in this era, undefeated, the new 2.0 Leon Edwards, undisputed welterweight champion of the world, ready to take on all comers, 32 years of age, having seen off the stalwarts of the upper class of this division convincingly in his last few fights, and Bilal is just another contender to be dealt with here.
That's interesting you say that. The obvious comparison is Bilal going into this fight is like Leon going into the second Usman fight, where it's just like, yeah, Usman stay busy, deal with the contender title fight, which then ends up shocking the world. I mean, that's the thing about Leon now, is that he can go on, he could defend the belt 6-7 times, and he could do it really boringly, but he'll always have that. He'll always have the head kick against Usman, and it always brings a tear to my eye thinking about it. And yeah, I agree with you in terms of the assessment of Bilal. I will push back slightly on the middling decisions, because to be honest, when I watched Leon in the Cowboy fight and the Dos Anjos fight, in the Nate Diaz one, I saw a guy that was just Gunnar Nelson. I just saw a guy that was just like well ahead of these guys. It was just, he had like such a unique, I don't know, modern style that it was I kind of feel like people almost had to catch up to him. And certain fights, like, it was not great. I think the Gunnar one is the worst one of those 4. But, he still dropped Gunnar with, like, the sick elbow. He still won the fight convincingly for me. He just has, like, weird moments, doesn't he, Leon? Like, he has the Nate Diaz being rocked by Nate Diaz. He's, in the Covington fight, he's fucking around going, like, I'm going to take this guy down. And he ends up on the bottom of the 5th round, and Joe Rogan's going crazy on, like, well, how does this look? Or whatever. And it's just like, I've just seen a guy dominate for 24 minutes, and now Covington's on top for 30 seconds. And you're going crazy. Leon's just a unique guy in that I kind of feel like he doesn't fall into traditional fighting narratives. And I think that's kind of the issue I have with Bilal, is that I can't pin him down with his fights and his performances. I don't look at him and I see some super modern style that people are going to catch up to. I just see, elements of, Ryan Bader. Do you know what I mean? And do you know what I mean?
If I was going to pick the weapon, the thing that does set Bilal apart, it's the cardio.
Yeah, for sure.
The intensity that he's able to maintain throughout the fight. Yeah. That's his standout weapon for me.
Definitely.
But other than that, fairly middling. And I wouldn't even say, he's a man who's going to go and break you with his pace. You know, I'm not talking about Frankie Edgar back when he was the lightweight champion.
Khabib.
I'm talking about, right. I'm just talking about this. The guy's got a good gas tank. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a constant tempo he's able to fight at, despite kind of what comes his way. And I think that's really interesting to see. And it's not kind of like the Covington thing where it's kind of a bit more showy. Covington kind of like just does stuff even if it's really sloppy and he misses. Bilal's like always kind of consistent with his striking, maybe not that spectacular. He never really does anything too flashy. It's all kind of similar tempo and engine. I think that's going to be the problem for him against Edwards. Like, I don't think he's going to be able to throw enough out there to bamboozle Edwards, where I think Edwards can go the other way for him, particularly also with Edwards being a southpaw. Like, Bilal's got one win over the southpaw, I think, and it was Damian Maia. He doesn't have a good record against southpaws. Very susceptible to head kicks as well from southpaws. That he's been cracked with head kicks by Jeff Neal and Leon Edwards, both from southpaw, within his recent run. So that's going to be a bit of an issue for him. But then going back to the narrative, just want to say with Bilal, the thing that he also has with Leon compared to the second Usman fight for Leon is that this is Bilal's only chance. He's not getting another title shot, like, if he loses.
Oh, I don't know. I think Leon, he wasn't getting another shot. Like, he really wasn't favoured at that point, Joe. It was kind of like begrudgingly they gave him it. It wasn't a draw. It wasn't, nothing exciting, of course, about the brand and the personality. It was just like they had to give it to him, and maybe other fights fell through, and Bilal's just kind of stayed there. So yeah, interesting to consider that. Really interesting, because actually, if I was to look at where they are respectively, again on this same pathway of discussion, you reference fights against Nate Diaz, right? This is 2020's Nate Diaz. You talked about Gunnar Nelson, obviously had a very Czech record and was in and out. Donald Cerrone, Brian Barberena. These are not names. These are not
RDA is the best name there.
Sure. But, to Bilal, I think his win over Sean Brady is probably counts for more for me than any of those. Stephen Thompson, in 2021, a man who can be difficult to take down, a man at that point who was looking at a resurgence himself in the division.
Yeah, definitely.
And Bilal shut that question down. Then, of course, you've got Damian Maia. So, actually, if anything, Bilal has the better record. It's just that now Leon has just gone off into the stratosphere in my mind. I really have him right up there. And before we actually get into why that is, I just want to reiterate, it's the Leon Edwards era now. I just feel like anything is possible. He looks like the most modern fighter that perhaps we have in the UFC, certainly in his weight class.
Yeah,
I think how refined his striking is.
Yeah, all
of course.
Yeah, I think like
takedown defense, distance control,
clinch game,
cardio is good. Rarely overextends. Technique always looks very crisp whenever he lands a shot. Just defensively
brilliant
sound.
Brilliant game planner. You saw it in that Covington fight. Like, Covington spent a lot of that time skirting on the outside, and any time he shifted to move direction, he squared up, and Leon every time just fired a shot down the middle, just teep to the stomach every single time, just easy point scoring, and I think that's the same thing that will happen.
He beat Colby everywhere. Like, the reason that fight was a little bit boring is that Colby was very aware early on, like, oh my god, he's got me. Like, the best I can hope for is that I don't get knocked out.
And he made that decision. I'm not gonna get knocked out. I'm not gonna win
because I can't open up at all. I can't take any risk because this man is going to piece me up.
Yeah, no, he knew that if he went charging in, Leon was just going to like piece him up. And every time, and actually, there was a video I saw. It was maybe the worst takedown attempt I've ever seen in the UFC, where Covington goes for a takedown. Leon takes 2 steps backwards, and then 1 step to his left, postures up, and then cracks him with a left hand, and then circles off. And I think Covington, that was in like round 2 or 3, and Covington was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm going to try and get out of here with some sort of pride intact. And to be honest, if he'd gone out there and gone like, fucking hell, this guy's got me and I can't do anything, I've just got to go for it, I think he would come out with more credit. You know, it's one of those things that, like, you've got to get badly hurt, son, if you're going to come out of this with any credit whatsoever. And I feel like we will see that from Bilal. I think he is going to pressure. He's going to come forward because that's the way he has to win. He saw it from Covington. I can't stay on the outside. And then he saw it from Usman, who pressed forward in the trilogy fight, and he was just like, oh god, this is a bit awkward to fight this guy. I mean, Leon, to give it... Go on, Tom.
Well, I just wanted to jump in on there, and I just really agree with you, Joe. I think Bilal will leave it all out there. Yeah. I think he will take those risks, and of course he's weathered a significant amount of punishment himself. You know, that's another thing you could give him some credence for. He
definitely
hasn't looked like quitting for a long time now, since, you know, very early on in his UFC run. Obviously undefeated now in 9 fights, 10 fights since the Jeff Neal fight that you referenced. So Bilal's going to get after him, and of course that's going to create openings. Perhaps now would be the good time to double back to that first fight, because my overwhelming reaction to that is that I just see the same thing as the Colby fight, really, where Bilal is trying to push the pace. He's trying to create some openings, and he's getting clapped for it. He's getting schooled. Like, the fight is on Leon's terms for me in that first fight.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was kind of wild watching it again, where, you know, you saw Leon in the Usman fights and the Covington fights, how considered he is, and then in that Bilal one, I mean, maybe it's a year of frustration of not fighting, just comes out there and just starts whooping him, like just walking him down in a way I've actually kind of never seen him do, and just unloading on Bilal. I mean, admittedly, Bilal took that fight on 3 weeks' notice because of Hamzat dropping out, and I think that's another thing we need to lock into just for a moment is Edwards' mentality. UFC 300, he said he'd fight Makhachev, he said he'd fight Hamzat, he said he'd fight Rakhmonov. He and Dana loved that, obviously. That's why I think if Edwards loses, he'll get an immediate rematch. Like, he's become a company favourite now. And yeah, I just think he'll probably take that same mentality into this Bilal fight of like, well, he's got no fear of this guy. I don't think Bilal can really get him on the feet. And Edwards said something after the Usman fight, this is the third one, that kind of broke my brain a little bit when it came to MMA, which is when he said, yeah, he can take me down, but I've no fear on the ground because he can't submit me. He has no submissions. So I'm just going to, like, get up. And then if I just get up, then I'm back on my terms. And it's like, oh, yeah, Usman doesn't have submissions. Covington doesn't have submissions. Bilal does not have submissions.
And just to connect the dots there, with the absence of that submission threat, you can take risks to get back up onto your feet.
Absolutely.
Because you can give up disadvantageous positions, but the other guy doesn't have the skills to lock in a submission, and you'll be able to fight that off as well. So
exactly.
Why not explode back to the feet?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, take my back, it's fine. I'm just going to fight your hands off, get to my knee, posture up.
Reverse you.
Yeah, reverse you. Yeah, you're not going to have that position, it's fine. I'm just going to get up. You know, I think that Leon has that sort of mentality, particularly with guys like this. And really, if I look at like welterweight now, like, is there anyone in there that has like a strong submission threat other than Rakhmonov? I mean,
yeah, Rakhmonov is the great asterisk on this Leon Edwards era.
He's the upcoming contender. He's the big contender we're most excited for. I think.
He's a threat, Joe.
Yeah, for sure.
The man is a big threat. I don't want to give too much away for that potential matchup. Let's hope we'll get it. Fine if Rakhmonov takes one more fight to get there, but you know it makes sense. I think Rakhmonov. I just don't think his defense is there.
No,
I favor Leon going into the fight. I'll tell you that right now. But he still is that asterisk, and the thing that makes me think, well, that could check this run of Leon.
Do you not have that feeling for Jack Della Maddalena?
No.
Just the physicals are just not there.
Yeah. I just think Leon's overall game, defense, and range is he's very masterful.
So he is.
He has such octagon control because of how crisp his technique is, how good he is at maintaining the range, and just how well rounded he is. Like, he can take the fight to places that Jack Della Maddalena can't.
Can I also point out something about the first fight compared to the second one? First fight was in the small cage, and the big cage definitely favours Leon. His ability to move around, it's just he's got such a much bigger canvas to work upon, and it's going to, impinge upon Bilal's ability to get to takedowns and to get to clinches and body locks. Like, I just don't think he's going to be able to do that. And actually, the physicality of Leon, like, he's huge for that division, and I think even middleweight would be a good challenge for him at some stage, depending on who ends up being champion. Can I also, maybe we shouldn't get ahead of this in terms of talking about contenders, but I don't know if we're going to be able to record. But it's like Makhachev is the other one that seems really interesting.
Yeah, Joe. I was about to shout it out, interject into what you were saying there. I thought, let's save it for a review. Let's not overcommit. But I would love to see that fight. And I think it does a lot for Leon's legacy and his place in the sport if Makhachev comes up and he's able to handle him. It's an intriguing fight.
I think he wins, but it's tricky.
Ooh, it's as exciting as Rachmanov, perhaps more because of where Makhachev is in the sport right now.
I think even if, let's say, for example, Leon beats Bilal and then he beats Rachmanov and then he beats Makhachev, in a way that I think that kind of in a defeat for Makhachev would be still of credit for him, that he went up and he fought Edwards and he fell short. In the same way that Volkanovski, when he made that move to face Makhachev.
Well, even more so, he's jumping up 15 pounds. Yeah, that's a huge jump. That's different to 10 pounds. And we're talking about a big welterweight, as you've mentioned. I think it's a real leap for Makhachev. Big lightweight though he is. Joe, we're waxing lyrical on our boy Leon here. Listeners, you should have known it was coming. All right,
it's hard.
When you press play, you hear these accents, you know what we're going to do. But just for the sake of argument, Bilal Muhammed winning this fight, how does it look? How does he want this fight to go?
Scraping 3 rounds to 2, like that's how he's going to have to do it. It's going to be grinding.
And those would be the later rounds, or this would be opening up frenetically and
he needs to win a round early.
A bit on the back foot.
He needs to win one of the first 2 rounds, if not the first round, because otherwise, I think if Leon goes 2 rounds up, confidence will be flowing. English crowd, jeering you. The pressure starts to build. You've probably been cracked a couple times. He's up against a tall, rangy southpaw. Yeah, it's going to be difficult for him. He needs to get takedowns quickly and early. Needs to up the tempo. Like, not be like, okay, I'm going to use my cardio for the later rounds. He should be using his cardio to push the pace early. Constant hands, constant flurries. Even just throwing high kicks out there, just to even get Edwards moving, get him moving backwards and occupy him.
He does like a kick, Bilal. He does a body kick, and
kicks up the middle.
I can't. But I just think that sets up counters for Leon. Yeah. I can't help but look at it that way. But let's say Bilal comes out at a pretty frantic pace, all right, and he gets punished for it. He gets over exuberant, but maybe he drops around. Maybe he can pick up one of the first 2. That pace where he's mixing in takedown attempts and he's working Leon up against the cage, a bit like Usman likes to. He's imposing his will a bit. He's wearing Leon out. Do you think that could open up in the later rounds opportunities for Bilal to take Leon down and kind of just
definitely
wear on him and steal those later rounds? Well, not steal them, but take them if he can get around in early. Just kind of.
Yeah.
Lay and pray.
Yeah, it will have to be, kind of some modern form of lay and pray. But again, as I said, those scenarios just to me open up what Leon wants to do. You forget as well, Covington took him down and Leon was attacking him with subs, to help with getting up.
But Colby never put that pace on Leon. Colby let Leon dictate the fight. And Bilal, I don't think he'll do that. I think he will wade through the fire to try to use his cardio as a weapon. So I just wonder, if he can sap Leon and retain his same frenetic kind of energy, then maybe you could find Leon looking a little
Maybe.
a little leggy, a little tired later on.
Maybe. Let's make a pick.
Anyway, I've picked Leon Edwards by knockout.
Yeah, same. Okay. Yeah, Leon Edwards knockout. Round 2.
Oof. I got it a little bit later than that. I think Bilal's durable, but I think he's going to get punished bad. I think he's going to get
I think he's going to get clapped.
He's going to get hurt. Yeah.
I think he's getting clapped. Like, I think head kick, down he goes, Leon with the ground and pounds. That's all she wrote. Like, I
honestly think a full tapestry of work. I'm talking about elbows to the face as he comes in. I'm talking about stepping out the side and coming around with a sweeping hook. I'm talking about jabs up the middle. I'm talking about Muay Thai clinch and knees coming up the middle, like he landed on Usman. The full tapestry. I think Bilal's going to experience it all.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Leon Edwards is 32, Joe, and it's his time right now. Sorry, Bilal.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like, we look at his age. And we looked at like that division. We thought this is Usman's division, and it was his division for a time. In the same way, we thought like it's Adesanya's division. It's Adesanya's time of the middleweight, and then it really wasn't. He was setting himself up for someone else's story, and maybe that was always the thing with Usman. Like he was just setting up Edwards' story. He set the target for Edwards. Do you know what I mean? Like because now Edwards. Well,
he's got a way to. He's got a way to go, Joe. He's got a way to go to be.
Beats Bilal, beats Rakhmonov. Beats Makachev.
Oh yeah, well now you're talking. Yeah.
Now we're talking. All right, but let's not go too far ahead of ourselves. Anyway, co-main event, heavyweight title on the line. That's right, you heard me. Heavyweight title on the line. I'm not talking any old interim bullshit. Tom Aspinall is back, baby, fighting Curtis Blades. Second time for these two. Obviously, the first one ended in seconds due to Aspinall blowing out his knee. And yeah, this is exciting. Curtis Blades, the guy we always talked about, is like the dark horse of heavyweight. The guy that, no one can really, get a real measure on. Is this guy a future champion? Is he just a guy who flatters to deceive? For me, personally, I think Blades is a tremendous threat to Aspinall, and that's who we're going to start with now. Let's talk about Blades first. Tom, he's just got everything there to be heavyweight champion. And yet he just can't, can he?
Yeah, it's the story of like I think he's been the favourite in every fight. He's been my favourite.
Yeah, same.
I religiously pick Blades because he is the most dominant wrestler in the heavyweight division, and wrestling has been the most dominant discipline in MMA for a very long time now. It's a natural pick, but unfortunately for Blades, he will rise through the ranks only to get chinned by Francis Ngannou. He got chinned on his debut. Doctor had to stop that fight.
Yeah.
Blades, devout professional, got back to work, overcame Olenek, Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem, sets up the rematch with Francis Ngannou back in 2018, bizarrely in Beijing.
Yeah, mad that, wasn't it? And that was, by the way, Francis post Stipe loss and Derek Lewis loss, where everyone's like, Ngannou's
he's
done.
Washed, he's done. Yeah,
and then
he's done. Just shot mentally.
Yeah. And then the turn.
Now we're just going to have Blades run over him, and Blades, I believe, I don't remember it rightly, ducks in and gets chinned.
No,
that's the Derek Lewis fight.
Ngannou sort of backed him up against the fence, and then he just exploded with the right hand, and Blades sort of like stumbled forward, and then Ngannou swarmed him.
That's right. Yeah, it kind of didn't even catch him flush.
No, it's just the threat of the knockout is enough to stop the fight.
to knock you out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, and then Joe, the same story again. All right, you're talking about beating Junior Dos Santos and Volkov. Great wins. I mean, Volkov just beat Pavlovich. Let's underline that. Who has been a real threat to the division. Tom obviously beating Pavlovich to become the champion, and then he gets done by Derek Lewis in 2021. That was an uppercut, wasn't it?
That was the dive where he was dominating the
shooting
fight. He was dominating the fight. Yeah. Didn't go for a takedown, and he went for one takedown. And Lewis said he only trained uppercuts for that fight because he knew the takedown was coming. And if he just didn't take him down, he would have won, like in the way that Cyril Gane beat Derek Lewis. And then he had that horrendous knockout. It was horrible, just dead on his feet, timber fall.
Yeah,
ref steps in. Derek obviously gets a couple more in after that, as is his wont. Yeah, Blades is always that guy, isn't he? Then he has that...
The nearly man. The historic nearly man.
Still to be the nearly man, I kind of feel like. I don't know. Aspinall's just got like... it's just got such like an aura around him. But I don't know, like my fear is that something bad's going to happen because it's tangentially related to John Jones, and bad things happen to John Jones rivals. Like guys that are like going for Jones, fucked up stuff happens, and I don't know why. And it just stops me from like fully getting excited about Aspinall. So like I don't have my heart broken.
It's heavyweight MMA, Joe, and
land of the gods.
You don't even have to land flush, you know.
Parker Porter,
Walt
Harris, all the top boys.
Yeah. I mean, you duck when you should have weaved, and that's all she wrote. You know, anyone can finish you, and of course, Aspinall has mentioned that himself many times. Tom Aspinall, he was made no secret of the fact that he was pretty scared going into that. Scared maybe is the wrong word. He was rightly concerned about fighting Pavlovich, given what he had done to people in the run-up to their fight.
You should be.
Should be, because he was on a real tear, Pavlovich, then. Just blowing people away in a quick flurry early in the first round. And so what do you do as Tom Aspinall? Well, you meet him on the feet and you catch him yourself. He surprised me. I was also seduced by Pavlovich just because of that danger factor.
Not me. I picked Aspinall that night. Do you know what it is as well? People forget that about that fight. Do you remember what happened before the fight when they had the face-offs?
The whole range measuring thing?
The range measuring thing where Aspinall put his hand out on his arm and Pavlovich said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And he felt his range, and it's just like he measured the range before the fight happened. And then when he saw Jones that time, he went to put his hand on his shoulder, and Jones was like, I know what you're doing. You can piss off with that. But yeah, I don't know. I think Aspinall's a crafty guy. I think some of this is, you know, some sort of mind games of sort where he's like trying to open up to guys, and maybe he's not entirely. Like, I think that he's a lot more confident than he lets on at points, which I like. I like that.
You have to be to step into the ring with Pavlovich. I guess it's hard to find the vocabulary to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be confident in your ability.
It's well documented as well, of course, because it was on the UFC's kind of behind-the-scenes show, inside the UFC. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of watching that yet. I watched it myself. Certainly don't want to be on the end of a negotiation with Hunter Campbell and the like. That sounds like a very murky, disturbing place to be. And they had Aspinall agreeing to a fight on 2 weeks. Aspinall said himself, like, he's never been called directly before. He knew it was something big. Oof. And it's Sergey Pavlovich on 2 weeks' notice. All right, great
indeed. Great offer.
Look, he emerged victorious, becomes the champ. Beautiful moment. How much can we get behind him? Well, you've got Curtis Blades, you've got John Jones, and you've got Cyril Gane, and after that, you've got no one else. So he's right in pole position now, and he thinks Curtis Blades is his biggest test so far.
Definitely, I think so. I think also some people are sort of misremembering that first Blades fight, and even Jones was saying it, where like, Blades was piecing him up. If you rewatch that fight, every single punch misses. Like, Aspinall's right out of range, but because of Aspinall's bouncy movement, maybe it looks a little bit closer than it actually is, if you're blind. But like, it's quite clear that Blades doesn't land at all. And then, I don't know. I'm kind of foreseeing that again, where I'm like Aspinall bouncing around, or whatever. And then it's like, is Curtis going to have that flashback? You know, Francis Ngannou bouncing around in front of him in Beijing and just cracks him. Like, I feel like that's probably going to happen. You know, Aspinall, he moves around at such like a springy tempo. He's got like such energy to his movements. And I can't help but be intoxicated by that. I mean, if we're talking about Aspinall's game and Blades' game, they kind of cover the three tenets of MMA, which is the striking, wrestling, and grappling. You know, Aspinall's got the striking and the grappling advantage probably over Blades, whereas Blades has the wrestling advantage. Obviously, because Blades has that wrestling advantage, it will allow him to open up strikes and grappling from there in a different way. You know, particularly the classic fake the takedown, come up with strikes sort of thing. You know, Don't expect any high kicks off Curtis Blades, though. Let's just get that right. So it's going to be all hands pretty much from him, and from Aspinall for the most part. Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of rough to guess this, to be honest. It's heavyweight MMA. It's probably 2 of the 5 best heavyweight fighters the UFC's got. You know, could be over in seconds, or it could be a 25-minute slog. I don't know. Like, it's just hard to call, isn't it?
It really is, but I will draw on one other thing that Tom said himself going into the fight. He highlighted the fact that actually Derek Lewis, our man Curtis Blades has been taken down more than any other heavyweight fighter. Yeah,
do you remember when Volkov took him down in that fight? When Blades was like exhausted, just like couldn't stay up on his feet.
He had already got the job done, basically. Late on in the fight. But I think it was the Jailton Almeida fight, all right? That's Blades' most recent performance, where he got handled for the first 5 minutes.
Good point.
Now, Aspinall was making the point that he is able to mix in a takedown of his own should the opportunity arise. And if you have top control in heavyweight,
you got the round.
That's chalk that one up. Joe, is there anything else you'd like to say about this fight?
Not really. No, I'd like to move on to the picks. You go first.
Sure. I've picked Tom Aspinall to win the fight by knockout.
Excellent. I have also picked Tom Aspinall to win the fight by knockout. I think just him springing in, exploded, right hand, top of the head, down goes Blades, ground and pound.
It's just, Blades' story seems to already be written.
I agree. I really agree, and it's a shame. It's a real shame because he's a talented guy. Right, let's talk about the rest of this main card now. Starting off with this bizarre fight to me. Bobby Green is back, and he's fighting Paddy the Baddie Pimblett. Now, Paddy Pimblett, back in the UK for the first time in a few years. The last time he was there, he was the biggest star on the card. It was the Paddy Pimblett show. This time, it feels he's on the last fight of his contract, and it feels a little bit to be like the UFC are going to be like, we'll see. I don't know if the UFC are going to re-sign him to a new deal. And I don't think he might re-sign for a new deal. And I think maybe they think that Bobby Green is a potentially good fight if he wins this, that they can re-sign him maybe. And if he loses, maybe they'll just cut him adrift and be like, okay, that's the end of you. You couldn't pass that test. There's no point having you. I don't know. Are you getting a similar vibe from this?
Joe, I it's certainly Paddy Pimblett place in the sport has diminished. Like the whole wave of Paddy mania is well behind us now. I don't think that has to stay that way, but God, Paddy just about scraped his way through Tony Ferguson. Really lost a round to Tony.
Yeah.
So
in a way that Bobby Green didn't against Tony Ferguson.
Right. And also, lost to Jared Gordon, and we know he lost that fight.
That's one of the worst.
Terrible in.
That's one of the worst.
Yeah, really egregious call and just really poor take from Pimblett. So he's fallen in our estimations. However, Joe, in terms of name recognition, he's still right up there.
Oh, for sure.
He's still right. He's still a star. If he wants to go and fight YouTube boxers, then he's going to draw eyes.
He's going to make a lot of money from it.
Right. And he's only 29. He's undefeated in the UFC. And so I find it very strange that the UFC haven't signed him to a new deal and are allowing him to enter the last fight on his contract. Chael Sonnen, he put a video out about this. Obviously loves to stir the pot. He thought Paddy's language about this going into the last fight was quite masterful in that, I love the UFC, but some of these silly YouTubers want to give me loads of money to go and fight them. So, after I'm done with Bobby Green, we'll have to see how it goes. And he thought that it must be some sort of a mission from someone in the team, the UFC, that he's in this position. I don't think it makes sense. The guy still has value. It would be a bad loss to lose here, and very possible as well. But I can't think they want to just let him go for free when he could go and build up any other competitor at 29 years old with one of the biggest followings still, I think, in the sport. You know, I think if you take a fan on the street, do they name Paddy in their first 10 fighters? I think probably, quite possibly they do.
Yeah, if you're asking 30-year-old man in the UK, name me 5 MMA fighters, or even 10 maybe, just to be safe, but like they definitely have him in there.
And you take your US fan, Joe, and you say, can you name one fighter from England? We've just waxed lyrical about our 2 top boys, our 2 champions. I think Paddy Pimblett will sneak in before both of them.
Maybe. I think, I don't know. I mean, on the business.
Joe, I've sent you into depression there.
Maybe,
I can see
I don't know.
The eyes roll back.
I don't know. I mean,
I think that might be the case. So it doesn't make sense for me from the UFC. I just don't understand it. It creates a very interesting spectacle in this fight, I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, unless they think he really isn't worth it talent-wise, and they're thinking...
Like, he's just so bad, there's nothing we could do with him.
Yeah, it's not like Conor, where it's like he had obvious flaws, but he had such a strong one-part element of his game.
Yeah, so they could chart a path to get him to where they wanted him to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, whereas Paddy, they're like, man, I mean, let's be real, Joe.
We do it every time. Go through 15 to 8 at the lightweight rankings. Who does he beat in there?
Yeah, we were going there again, and the matchup you want is probably this matchup.
Yeah.
It's probably this matchup because Bobby Green, let's just give a quick overview. Obviously, very active fighter, famous for fighting with his hands down, quick on the feet, clean strikes, occasionally gets caught, getting a little bit too cocky, but an entertaining spectacle. No real threat in terms of a takedown, no grappling, not much kicking either. And Paddy might just outmuscle. If he can get a hold of him and he can pull him into a grapple, he might just outmuscle him. And, he's definitely the bigger, more athletic fighter. Outside of that, you're looking at stern tests. Do you want RDA, even at his age, for Paddy? Well, you definitely don't want Jalen Turner with that kind of range and Paddy's clumsy style trying to come in through that.
Hooker.
Yeah, Moicano, that sounds like fun, the fight, but God, it's so dangerous for Paddy. And then Benoit Saint-Denis, as you mentioned, Dan Hooker.
Hooker will kill him.
Yeah, I feel the same, and Dan Hooker
the talk of Topuria versus Pimblett?
Oh my God.
He would have murdered him. It would have just been a demolition.
It's ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. I mean, Paddy is not mentioned that boy for a long time.
No, God, nor should he ever even think about mentioning Topuria at all. Yeah, I mean, I kind of foresee that, to be honest. I think he's going to miss quite badly with some of his striking against Green. But, Green's slightly older now.
Oh, yeah.
Slightly older now. The speed isn't quite there in the same way it was before, but he can still make Paddy miss, and I think he will. I kind of agree with you, though. I think Paddy will be able to outmuscle him and just wrestle him to the ground and hold him for quite long periods, threaten submissions.
I mean, in that position, I think Paddy could finish him.
Yeah, for sure.
He definitely has the capacity to do that. My question is, when does this happen in the fight? Because, not to dwell on the Tony Ferguson fight, Joe, but it was terrible. Yeah, it was terrible awful. Showing from Paddy. It was really dreadful. We know the position Tony's at in his career, and Paddy should be blowing Tony away. He tried to do that. He really went out there and tried to employ his full athleticism, which is a strength of his, And when I say that, I mean that he's powerful, Joe. He's strong. He's explosive, Paddy. But he couldn't get it done against Tony, and you've got to imagine he's going to be whiffing on a lot of shots. He's going to be his hair's going to be flopping all around the octagon as Green peppers him with jabs.
Yeah,
Paddy's getting pot shot. He's getting a bloody nose coming in. He's going to be puffing and wheezing, and if he can't close and grapple with Bobby pretty much in the first round, I think he could lose this fight.
Because Bobby Green can strike at that tempo for 15 minutes easily. You remember the Fiziev fight?
No problem. Yes.
Oh God, imagine Fiziev versus Pimblett. Jesus.
But I'm talking about the drop off in Paddy Pimblett in the third round against Tony.
Yeah.
He fell off a cliff If the same thing happens against Bobby, Bobby will piece him up. He will take him to school. He'll 10-8 him. And yeah, so there could be a huge momentum shift in this fight, and that always makes for a fun fight.
So it's always fun, actually. By the way, like even in like the dire quality of it, sometimes it's always like dramatic with him. So I'm always fine with that. I mean, I just go back to his debut against Luigi Vendramini, where he was getting cracked on the feet by that guy, and then he just swarmed him with strikes. It's like getting cracked like that against that guy is just not acceptable. So yeah, I'm not too keen on this.
We talked about strengths. Just again, another huge Paddy strength. That chin is just
unbelievable.
Work of unbelievable. Yeah. But it stood up to the test so far. So I think it would be a real shock for Paddy to be finished.
Yeah, I'm going with Pimlet decision.
Yep. Yeah, Joe. I'm going with a Pimlet decision.
Bugger.
Two rounds to one.
I thought you were going to go green. I was really convinced of it.
Bobby Green, I'll tell you now, he is a favourite.
Ooh.
Favourite going into this fight. Yeah. That's how far Paddy's fallen, right? We said it here. That's how far he's fallen. Wow. 37-year-old Bobby Green on home territory, a guy clinging on to 15th in the rankings, and he's the favourite against this undefeated in the UFC rising star, Paddy Pimlet. So Paddy's got it all to do, really.
Do you think that they're going to give Pimlet 15 if he wins, and then just give him the Sean O'Malley, here's number 3, Justin Gaethje, see if you can beat him, and if you can, there's a title shot?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think Paddy can turn this all around, and that's why I'm really, 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 really surprised that he's on the last fight of his contract. So Paddy needs to go out there and get it done. That could happen early. Just blow Bobby Green away. Rely on that chin,
Absolutely. Right, this fight now, I'm looking forward to this. Christian Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodriguez. Awooga, violent central here. These two are going to be swanging and banging during this one. Duncan's had a pretty good turnaround recently in the UFC. 2 knockout wins against Claudio Ribeiro and Dennis Lulien. Sorry, my mistake. After dropping a sort of weird defeat to Armen Petrosyan, where he just sort of gave up basically in round 3 of that fight. It was very odd from Duncan, but I've always been impressed with him. Anytime I've seen him, he's got good physicality to him, good striking, good measured striker, and he is facing RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez. All action, all the time, pressing forward. He's turned it around recently after a couple defeats. They've both had 2 finishes in a row. I think that they are potentially going to put on a banger here. I do slightly favour, though, Duncan with range management over Rodriguez. But if Rodriguez can make it a bit sloppy, make it a bit messy in there, I wouldn't say no to that. Would not say no to that, Tom. What's your sort of initial feelings on this fight?
Yeah, Joe, you definitely, I think you nailed it with the way that you've introduced this. It lined up to be a great fight. Rodriguez, he is sloppy. He's very physical. He's absolutely terrifying when he's got you on the back foot and he's on the inside, wading forwards, because he will just pulverize you through the cage. The man is absolutely formidable. However, in getting to that position, he is extremely limited on the outside, and he's there to be caught coming in
and wide open when he's throwing as well. If you can counter him.
And I would like to think that Christian Leroy Duncan can. My suspicion is that fighters fans and perhaps fighters as well will be less familiar with Christian Leroy Duncan. When I've seen him, I think he should have more name recognition than he does. That he seems not like the finished article. I'm not going to say that, but he's got a bit of pizzazz, a bit of flash to him. Outside of that strange loss that you referenced. What is the kind of biggest weapon that he has? What should people be looking out for?
I just think it's the variety of strikes he's able to throw. The fact that he's... Yeah, go on.
Sorry, Joe. I keep cutting you off here. I'm over-eager. Well, there's a highlight of Duncan in one of his recent successes, and he is wading forward. He's got his opponent kind of pressed up against the cage, and he's kind of wading forwards, and he hits him not just with one elbow.
Yeah.
But then he comes back, so he hits him first, I believe, with the right elbow, and then straight onto his left elbow, shifts his body weight, and fully turns into a left elbow. And an elbow combination like that is not something you see very often at all.
And I thought flush,
and they were flush, Joe, I can tell you.
Yeah. That's the thing that I like about him. In terms of his striking, is that sort of variety. And as you say, like, there's no like pattern sort of striking with him, where this is his, the classic Robert Whittaker 1-2 step through high kick, like the Dustin Poirier jab straight step through another straight. That Duncan doesn't have that yet. At least I've not spotted any. So I think that's kind of what makes him exciting to me. Whereas Rodriguez is obviously a little bit more.
He's a bruiser.
Fists, straights, lots of straights. Not much of a jab. And I think that because of that, Duncan might be able to work around that. If he can slip some of those shots, maybe like a step-in elbow, like that sort of thing could be open for Duncan. As you can tell, I'm pretty high on Christian Leroy Duncan for this one here, Tom. And unsurprisingly, I've picked Duncan to win by knockout.
Yeah, that's an interesting call, Joe. Yeah, I mean, there is the element of Rodriguez's jiu-jitsu and testing the ground game.
He ain't got any interest in that, son. Come on. He only got that belt for decoration. I'm not having that.
I've picked Christian Leroy Duncan by knockout.
Oh, my word. Have we matched up on every single fight?
We've matched up on every single fight. And now it's your boy, Arnold Allen.
The Almighty.
This must be... Yes. Can he deliver it for Joe?
I bloody hope so. 2 defeats in a row for Arnold here. I got to say, the last one I thought was very dodgy. I had him beating Evloev, and I know you were similar. You had Allen winning that. I remember on the pod.
I think there was a clear round for each of them, and then it was a close round.
But I thought that we, if you go again, I always hate it though. If you go by the scoring criteria, then really it's just like, okay, but did they really win? It's always a bit bullshit. Either way, I'm saying that.
I think this was one of those fights I wanted a 4th and a 5th round. I think that was it.
Same.
Arnold Allen was coming in more to the fight. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. He's facing Giga Chikadze, who's... I mean, where the fuck has this guy been? He's I mean,
doing hits for the mob, Joe.
Yeah, he is a dodgy-looking man. That's got nothing to do with his nationality, listeners.
I'll make this comment on Giga Chikadze. All right, I've recently had the pleasure of buying a new television.
Oh yes,
and
I know.
It's been a little while.
Yeah,
the old one. It was a fatality when I was painting the house, and so I finally had to upgrade, and I've kind of joined the modern era. First time buying a TV in a long time, I'll tell you right now. And Joe, the most striking about my new TV is I can see all the contours and scars on Giga Chikadze's face.
Oh wow!
And it keeps me up at night, Joe. He is a scary looking guy, really scary looking guy.
I've never noticed.
And we should keep track on all of his movements outside of the cage.
Jesus. Okay, fair enough. My last memory of him, I have no memory of him fighting Alex Caceres, by the way.
No, it's the Calvin Kattar fight.
The Kattar one where
demolished.
He was demolished. And actually even the Edson Barbosa one, where he was struggling at points against Barbosa in that fight, and then he obviously turned it round with the body kick from there. I'm going to say it right now, listeners. You may think that this is bias, but this is my view. I don't really rate Giga Chikadze. I'm not big on Chikadze. I don't think he's that great. I think he's got a couple little interesting wrinkles, but ultimately I'm not that impressed by him. And frankly, if he hasn't improved massively in the time away, and I'm not counting that Caceres fight, the Calvin Kattar fight is the last one I saw, and that's all I'm counting here. I think he could be in some trouble here against Arnold Allen, who's coming off 2 defeats, who needs to get a win to turn this round. And, I think Allen is kind of in line with some of these other English MMA fights that we've been talking about on this card. Modern style, thoughtful approach, good game planner, and, he's got good power in his hands as well. I think this could be a bit of a rough one for Chikadze if it's a kind of maybe I could almost see a bit of a rehash of the Cater fight. You know, once it gets into clinch range, boxing range, you know, Cater sort of like pieced him up pretty much, and I could see Allen doing similar. Is there any pushback you want to give me on that, Tom?
No. No, there isn't. I go with what you're saying here. Arnold Allen is definitely at a turning point. A loss to Giga Chikadze here would be...
Yeah.
That would be curtains for me on considering you like a proper top 10 featherweight fighter. I was very critical of Arnold Allen in the Max Holloway fight, even though it was a kind of 8 out of 10. You know, if Holloway's was a 10 out of 10, Allen was just a couple of steps behind. It wasn't a bad showing,
and he could have done more to make that closer, that fight. You saw it.
That is the question that remains open, right? I'm willing to believe that, but he has to go and put on a show against the likes of Giga Chikadze. I'm willing to believe that Allen can ascend for further heights, but a loss here would snuff out that belief very quickly, because Chikadze doesn't belong to the top 5 of the division. No. He has been found out already. He's now 35 years old. Of course,
he's that old.
He's that old, and of course he came in as a kickboxer. We get to see that on display. It can be very, very fun, but we certainly found out his limit against Calvin Kattar, a very effective boxer and more of an all-round
overall MMA game.
Yeah, MMA fighter. So, Kattar versus Allen remains a fight I'd love to see. You know, it was a shame about the knee injury that Kattar had in their fight. That would help me to determine where Allen is, because Kattar there, he's putting his marker down. He's also come off a bad showing to Max Holloway, but he remains present with his win over Chikadze, where he dominated him. Allen has to do the same to keep pace, but he's not as crisp a striker as Calvin Kattar is.
Yeah, I disagree. I think Allen was going one way, that Calvin Kattar fight for me.
Perhaps.
I at least off that first round we saw. I've gone Arnold Allen, obviously, because I've picked every English fighter, so I might as well continue it. Arnold Allen by decision for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Allen by decision.
Oh, for fuck's sake. So we've matched up on
Joe snookered me.
When you said you'd gone wilding out, I'm just like, he's definitely picked Chikadze just to need me
that would wow. Yeah. I'd have lost my mind picking Chikadze.
What was your wild pick then?
All the knockouts, Joe.
Yeah,
all the knockouts.
Yeah,
there's a lot of knockouts. Yeah,
I think they're feasible though. Like Rodriguez has been knocked out. Blades has been knocked out. Bilal should be knocked out. You know, that's we've got some good ones here. Maybe that Leon one maybe was a bit of a mistake, but you know what? I'll stick with it for now. Nothing really standing out for me on the prelims. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think Makayev versus Cap is gonna happen. Like I'm pretty sure that's not gonna happen. Like it's supposed to be on the main card, and now it's on the early prelims.
It's a hell of a fight, which is a real shame if it's not going to happen.
Unless it's like some TV thing where they're like, "Oh, we want Makayev on earlier," like because of the Middle East sort of thing, or I don't know. Because he fights a lot out in Abu Dhabi now, doesn't he? And I think he's based out in Abu Dhabi now. So
I think he's got a wealthy Bahraini backer. That's in the news quite often.
Yeah, that's it. So maybe that one. Right,
but it's a hell of a fight.
Yeah,
it is a hell of a fight.
If it happens, I want Makayev to win. Like again, I've got to be backing my boy now.
I thought Manal Cap was your number one. You told him he was going to rule over the flyweight division for a long time.
If he could get his head in gear, which I just don't think he can. By the way, what are they doing having Urseg Cara France like 4 weeks after this when Cara France Cap is like right there? Cara France versus Cap in Australia would have been the fight to make. Anyway, whatever. Should we go through our picks again?
Yeah.
Well, very simple here. Both picked Arnold Allen to win by decision. Both picked Christian Leroy Duncan by knockout. Both picked Paddy Pimblett by decision. Both picked Tom Aspinall by knockout. We both picked Leon Edwards by knockout. So it's a draw already, which is a bit of an anticlimax. I'm sorry, listeners. We're not going to make a Meatball Molly pick just as a sort of
tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker. because we don't do that shit around here. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week to talk about this card, hopefully, life permitting. Tom, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Joe.
And listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the fights.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.